Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. We'll be exploring the subject of animals in the afterlife. With me is Miranda Alcott. She is an intuitive animal communicator. She's also the author of a chapter about listening to water in the book, The Healing Power of Water, edited by Masaru Emoto. Welcome, Miranda.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's lovely to be here
It's
again.
a pleasure to be with you once again. I know you have a lot to say about this subject, meaning that you've had many experiences, many intuitions. You've been with many animals and their owners or their partners during that transition. Many of our viewers are probably justifiably skeptical when we talk about the afterlife, especially based on somebody's intuitions. And I think that's fine. We'll just regard your intuitive impressions as a source of data. People can do with it as they wish.
Exactly. I'm only here to offer some opportunities of different ways of holding information and seeing how you feel. Most people do have feelings from their animals after they've transitioned, after the animal has left its body. Some people will hear toenails on the ground. Other people will feel an animal jump onto the bed. They want to know what does it mean, and is that animal really with me? So there are those basic kinds of questions that I get, but then also it goes into a deeper place, which is my favorite place to work, which is what I call the intersection, which is the intersection of where those two beings still have to learn from each other. So the work.
In other words, the relationship can continue.
Absolutely. The relationship
just as it
continues.
might with a human.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was very young, I worked with humans who had transitioned, and I stopped doing it for a long time because I got tired of where did Aunt Harriet bury the treasure? You know, that was like some kind of a seance or some kind of a challenging, that's not the type of work that I do. The type of work that I get to do, and so blessed, is what do we have to learn from each other still? So sometimes there will be animals that maybe were hit by a car and the human is very upset because the animal left its body and it was very hard. Sometimes the animal has been sick for a very long time and the animal has to transition. Other times the human, they come and they say, my animal is very sick and I want to know if he's ready to transition, and does he need help or does he want to be left alone?
Well, there are many issues that you're raising here. There's the transition process, there's the grieving process, and then there's the whole metaphysical question about the afterlife itself.
Yeah, I see it as a continuum. I don't see it as separate then, because also many times after the animal has transitioned, the human is still learning, and there are still wonderful lessons to be shared and things to be learned. Yeah. So I just feel I'm one of the most fortunate people there is, simply because I get to support people in their healing and learning and growing, and the same with the animals. They're all people to me.
Well, you serve as a medium of communication between a deceased animal and a human.
Right. And then there are also times when perhaps a human has taken their life and their animal has witnessed it. So that's the reverse of what we normally think. And that actually happens more times than we wish it would, obviously. We wouldn't like it to happen at all. But many times the animal is shattered or has trauma they're trying to get over because they witnessed it, because they tried to help their human feel better. They tried to express love in such a way that this human wouldn't feel the need to do that or have to do that. But as it turns out, we can't control each other. All they can do is offer and hopefully provide some recourse. So after the fact, we can connect again and see if there's more learning and healing and growing to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I wanted to mention that there does seem to be a change that happens in whomever has transitioned, whether it's human or animal, where that being seems to have softened some. Not always, but sometimes. So, for instance, if an animal was cantankerous or jealous or very territorial, many times the human is expecting that the animal will be the same way, and I haven't found that to be true. I found that the human knows if they're connecting with their own animal, usually their tears. They know when they hear something that resonates with them, they know it's their animal.
Well, how does your intuition work in this regard? If you're trying to tune into a deceased animal, how do you find that particular animal and recognize it yourself?
What a great question. Well, for me, I ask if they have a picture of the animal. If they don't, I'll ask them to describe the animal. And as they are describing the animal, I'm using their energetic patterns to trace the energy to wherever that is. Mm-hmm. I don't go out. I'm not trying to make it sound as though I do. But I will know if the energy that comes into a gathering shows itself in some form that we have that exact intersection.
You're not a trance medium.
No.
You're operating, I'm going to say, at a telepathic level.
Yes.
Conscious level, and you're picking up impressions.
That's right.
And communicating.
That's right. And I'm working from purely an energetic standpoint. Mm-hmm. If the energy patterning matches, the person will let me know simply by their identifying and knowing they're hearing from their animal what's being said.
So I presume if a human were to transition, you would be able to pick up on them as well.
Yes. And I used to do that a lot when I was a child. Mm-hmm. But I got to a place where I was tired of people asking, where did Aunt Harriet bury the treasure? Yeah. And that's because really the work that I get to do is really focused and based on healing and evolvement. And here's what I mean by that. We all have lessons we're working on. We don't usually complete everything in one lifetime. So do the animals. If their spirit happens to be in an animal body, then that's what they're learning at that time. But to connect both the animal and the human at the exact intersection of where they still have to learn from each other is where I work, and it's very exciting. Mm-hmm.
Now you could do that with two humans also, couldn't you?
Yes, and that actually has happened because I do work with people who've taken their lives and their animals maybe have witnessed, or just the person themselves. Yeah.
Now, in my experience, I'm not an animal person. I like animals, but I don't have any in my life.
Right.
In any case, I've observed that when a pet or an animal companion dies, people experience as much grief as if it were a family member.
Or if not more. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many people I have heard say to me, this is harder than when I lost my mother, or this is harder than when I lost my brother, which is not to berate or lessen the human. It's that being they had offered them unconditional love for so long. Mm-hmm. That was a part of their everyday, of how they process, how they live, the human. And so to not have that, in their perception to not have that, can be very challenging.
Yeah.
And that's one thing the animals taught me many years ago. They asked me, why is it when we leave our bodies that the humans disconnect from us? Why do they say because they can't see us, we're not here? Why do they do that? And it's an interesting, challenging position to be in to explain how that can happen to someone. And usually by the time I get them relaxed, then they are willing to be receiving of that information that comes through for them.
I see. Well, let's talk a little also about the afterlife itself. I have a hard time conceptualizing it because it seems as if it's a place, like it has a location somewhere.
You know, it's interesting. It depends on the person's belief system, because everyone wants to know that their horse has endless amounts of grains that they love.
Yeah.
You know, alfalfa or whatever their sweet treat is, Timothy pellets or whatever. You know, and with many dogs, people want to see that their dogs are just running on grass and having every kind of ball they want. It depends on how the human is holding what their idea is. I have not found it to be a place. I've found it to be a frequency. It's very different, energetic. But it isn't up to me. My job is to hold whatever those two need to have for them to support them to know they have not disappeared. You know, that's another thing that animals say to me. Please tell my humans, stop referring to me in the past. If I were in the past, how could we communicate? So why does she say, oh, he used to be so? And the human will say, you mean I can still communicate? I'm saying yes, especially just before you fall asleep. If you say, I am only open to that which is for my highest good, and so that spot or, you know, my animal will come through, I'm willing to travel with that animal for a few minutes before I go to sleep. So they're now programming and requesting with wonderful elements inside of only for my highest good to go on those journey themselves without using me.
Well, the spiritualist literature, which I've delved into a bit, suggests that at least in the early stages of being in the afterlife state, we populate it with our own thought forms.
Yes, absolutely.
And eventually we may evolve beyond the need to do that and enter into a different realm entirely. But there's at least a transitory period where we experience the world around us as we think it to be.
Yes, exactly. Which is why, you know, one of the things that I really enjoy is when an animal is about to transition and we know there's going to be euthanasia, there are children in the family. The parents are usually panicking. Oh my gosh, what do we do with the kids? One of my favorite things is to suggest that the children draw pictures or write letters to send with the animal, so that the animal can take them. That's a wonderful way to work with that. And in fact, those children grow up to be adults who believe that their letters went with them, or they could visualize and see that that was part of the step of getting to an afterlife. Children are much more open about this.
Well, I've also gathered from the afterlife literature, which is actually quite vast, that communication doesn't last forever. Sooner or later, whoever it is going to move into a realm where communicating with the earthly plane is just no longer important.
Right. And either they have new assignments that they take on or receive, or they go back into just a pure energetic state, meaning they can join anywhere. And they don't necessarily stay in a confirmation of being an animal or a human or that personality. Yeah. But very much of soul continuing on. Right. That's been my experience, is that there is only a certain amount of time.
A window of...
there's a window, but it can be very long for some people.
It could be for years.
It can be, because if those two beings still have more to do together, there are many people that teach without themselves realizing it, when they turn and talk to a co-worker, that they can still feel their animal. And their animal is right alongside them, and they tell stories about it, and then they say, I know that I was getting a coffee this morning, and I could hear his toenails on the floor, and I just turned around, and of course he wasn't there, but I could hear him. Now, they're teaching when they share that experience. And those animals go right alongside with their humans for a while, and they teach together, or they grow together. There are many animals who express incredibly articulate guidance to their humans from the afterlife about what they need to work on in their lives. And the human could not hear it before. I've worked with people where their animals have told them that before they left. And they didn't comprehend it, they didn't take it in at a level, and then they come and they want to hear what their animal says, and now they hear it. Because now they're much more vulnerable, they're willing to listen, they're willing to be open, they're willing to give it a chance.
Well, what we're touching on is a topic from a previous interview about things that animals have to teach us. And that's really quite extensive. And what you're saying is it goes on even after the transition.
Yes.
Animals can be teachers.
Yes.
From the other side.
Yeah.
And another point you raised in an earlier interview, maybe we can come back to, is the idea of spirit guides, that animals can work with spirit guides. They have spirit guides.
Well, animals can become someone's spirit guides, but animals have their own teachers, yes. I don't know that I would call them spirit guides, but they're forms of teachers. Just as if that's what the human wants to call them, the human can call them angels, spirit guides, master teachers. Everyone has their own focus of how. A
Jungian might call them an archetype.
There we are. Yeah. So I haven't found it to be any one way. It's very multiverse.
Well, would you say that animals and humans can be together in an afterlife?
Usually in the beginning of the transition, many people picture that.
Yeah.
They develop that that's what they want, and that's what it has. That's what happens. I know many people, when their animal has transitioned, wants to know that a relative welcomed their animal. Are they together?
Yeah.
Can it happen? And yes, it can happen. As a matter of fact, there are teams that meet up on the other side, which is kind of fun to witness and watch.
Explain that.
Yeah, well, for instance, I know there was a family I worked with that had a couple of animals that transitioned. And then suddenly the wife became very ill, and she knew she was going to be transitioning. And she wanted to know, was anyone going to be waiting for her? And in fact, the dogs were there waiting with a catcher's mitt. And she felt so relieved that it was a really wonderful, easy transition, knowing that she was going to something. I think that is a great factor.
And you were there.
Yes.
And she's talking to you about
Oh, no,
this?
she's talking. And her family told me that she was seeing them as she was transitioning. And she was saying, they're here, Skippy's here, you know, and look at Goo. Goo is here too. And she was so excited and lit up. Yeah.
But if you are there in the circumstance, you might see what she's also seeing.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've seen that with humans as well. There was one gentleman in particular who had, as he was transitioning, he sat up and he was seeing things. And I asked what he was seeing, and he, and I couldn't imagine so I asked to see what he was seeing. And it looked like a Fellini movie to me. It was in black and white with very extreme. And I said to this gentleman, it's like a Fellini movie. And he said, how did you know? And it turned out he was a film buff. And that was all, so it surprised me.
Yeah, I could imagine Afterlife as a Fellini film. As a matter of fact, I could really get into that.
There you go. There you have it. Well, then Jeffrey will make sure.
Well, now, what about other wild animals?
About wild animals?
Yeah, like do they have an afterlife in your? Have you had any experience of that?
I have, actually. I've seen wild animals come back around and hold for the rest of their pack or their pride, which is a fascinating experience, because when animals are sickly, there are certain cultures, certain species that will take down their own kind, because an animal that is sick in that pack is actually lowering the energetic of the rest of the pack. But what's fascinating is after that being transitions, what energy they have now renews, and they put it back into the pack, and they can oversee it as well. So there are pack leaders, in other words, in the animal kingdom, that will use one of their wise animals, as we might say, as a North Star. Yeah. And that happens for a while, and again, everyone goes on and moves on, either into a pure energetic or dissipates, into energy. So,
and I would assume that reincarnation of animals is also something you might experience.
And I get a lot of questions about that. There are people that come that want their animals to come back in, and then there are people that come and say, "You're not going to believe this, but I swear this is an animal I had when I was growing up." And we ask whether it is or not. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's another animal that animal has sent to take care of that human.
I know there's a popular film out right now about a dog that incarnates in 5 or 6 successive times. So it's a theme that's getting picked up by Hollywood.
Yes.
But what you're saying is that in your very authentic, intuitive experience, I call it very authentic, and let me just say why briefly, and that is based on a concept developed by the great psychologist and philosopher William James called radical empiricism, that the most direct observations of the world that we get come from our intuitions, from our observations of our own consciousness. That's real data, just as much as, to me, as if you were reading the dials on a scientific instrument.
I appreciate your sharing that, because for me it is always real. It has been real, and it was quite an adjustment coming into this life. I couldn't believe people didn't know where they had just been, and I couldn't believe that they wouldn't speak to the animals in their lives. Why would you draw a line? Why would you do that? And in fact, some of the people that are in human experience right now that are most challenged about being alive right now at this time on the planet are very sensitive beings who have not shut down the right side of their brain. This is a very challenging time to be that sensitive here.
Yeah, many people are called empaths. For example, and I know because we are in a culture that doesn't support it.
Right.
Our culture is off balance.
It is off balance. Thank you for saying that. It is off balance. And I encourage, because I have many students that come into the classes that haven't been given credit for being empathic, or they're ashamed of it, or they're embarrassed about it. And it's taken me years to figure out how to deal with that, because I came in excited about all there was, and then had to pull it back in because other people weren't. Well, I mean, one of my favorite teaching stories was I was so used to hearing people say, "Well, you're just so sensitive." And in fact, my mother would even say, "Well, honey, you're so unique." And that was really hard to be on the receiving end of it, because where I came from, that was a good thing. And to have this in this lifetime, have it be something bad. So what I share with my students is, just not too long ago, I was having some dental work done, and the dentist was complaining about the Novocaine and how much she had to give me. And she said, "Miranda, you are just so sensitive." And I said, "Yes, and that's how I make my living."
Well, indeed you do. And the truth is, as you've explained to me in the past, your parents are probably much more supportive than most. They were board members of the American Society for Psychical Research. They were knowledgeable about this arena.
They were, but even they said, "That's fine, honey, just keep it in the house."
Which is sometimes good advice.
Yes, it is, especially when you're growing up. Yeah, especially when you're growing up, because you don't know that people can't see other people, or that they can't see other forms of energy.
Well, one of the purposes of these videos, of this video channel, is to offer a certain amount of validation for people who might be the way you were as a child.
And I really appreciate the work that you do, Jeffrey, because you expose all of us to things that we would not have been exposed to. And it is so important for people to know it's okay to be who they are, and to prize their sensitivities instead of trying to hide them or shove them down. So thank you for the work that you do.
Well, you know, it takes a certain amount of courage on your part to come and create a video which will be shown all over the world talking about animals in the afterlife.
I'm excited about it. It's time. It's time.
Yeah. And I can tell from the way you're speaking, you really don't have any doubt about your perceptions.
No.
You're not questioning this reality at all, are you?
No. You know, I have limitations. Those aren't some of them.
Yeah.
So I don't have the limit of that. I have other ones, but that's not, we all come in with things to work on. So, yeah.
But doubting yourself isn't one.
Not in this area. I've had too many things working with people that transitioned or victims of violent crime. Certainly my experience on Ground Zero. That's
yes,
something.
You've done a lot of rescue work.
And you have to prepare for that on so many levels, especially being sensitive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had a lot of experience, I'm happy to say. And then also tough things about how do you deal with that when you're in a crisis? How do you do that being empathic and not get involved in that energetic?
That's really tough. Because I think speaking for myself, it's easier to close down than to have to feel other people's pain.
And there's also something very primal, that when a person is scream crying, it actually resonates inside of us on a vibrational level, fear to the core. So it is something that we have to train for, and something we have to be cognizant of, and something we have to monitor.
Well, Miranda Alcott, I know we've just scratched the surface of a vast topic. I mean, we could talk forever.
Which I would enjoy, because I enjoy listening to you and speaking with you.
Thank you. And I know for anyone who's willing to put up with it, we've got already 100 hours of video on the internet, and there will be more to come. But for now, Miranda, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for inviting me, Jeffrey.
My pleasure. And thank you for being with us.